if you look in the Bible for answers to the question, why does God permit evil, I'm not sure that you find any really straightforward, definite answers. I mean, Paul says, for example, that he says that he fills up in his own person or his own body what is lacking in the sacrifice of Christ. But I don't know if that's really a response to the question, why does God permit evil? I think, though, the Bible does show us how one should think about evil, even if, I mean, it's not the case that you have to have an answer to this question in order to think about it appropriately. And if you look at the book of Job, for example, here we've got Job, who was a righteous man, a good man, as it says in the beginning. And then there's this transaction between God and Satan that Job has no knowledge of, which results in Job's being afflicted, and he suffers mightily for a long time. His children are killed. He himself is covered with boils. He winds up sitting on an ash heap, scratching himself with potsherds, and I mean, he is in real trouble. Well, then along come his three friends, Bildad the Shuhite, and Eliphaz the Temanite, and Zophar the Naamathite, and they come and, as the story goes, they sit around the fire for about a week, and nobody says anything. They're all just hunkered around the fire, maybe sighing in sympathy with Job. And finally they start telling him that he must be really wicked for God to afflict him in this way. Well, Job knows that he's no worse than they are anyway. I mean, everybody's sinful, but he's no worse than they are, and he's not being afflicted because he's so much worse than the average guy running around. And he tells them that, and he also starts getting testy with God and says he wants to go to court with God. But then he reflects, that if he did, God would be the judge and the jury and the prosecutor and maybe the executioner. So that doesn't look good. But still, he's angry with God, and he says he wish he could get this resolved in a just fashion. He's not being treated fairly by God. God is not treating him right. And this goes on for a while, and then finally God comes to Job, and then there are those marvelous lines there when God says to Job, what makes you think you know so much? Were you there when I created the world? Were you there when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Can you do this? Can you do that? And so on. Well, Job then sees what God is really like. He gets a real perception of God's greatness and goodness and knowledge and justice and beauty. And he says, well, I was wrong. I shouldn't have been rebelling. I shouldn't have been trying to call you to account. Now that I see what you are really like. So Job never finds out why God permits evil. God doesn't say, here's why I do it, for this reason, that reason, that reason. Not at all. But he does show Job what his own person is like. And that's enough. Then Job sees that God must have a good reason. He doesn't know what it is, but he's got to have a good reason. Seems to me that's the same way it is for Christians. We don't know why God permits this evil, but we do know something about God of the same sort that Job was shown. We know by virtue of the life and death and resurrection of Jesus that even if we don't know why God permits evil, he himself is willing to suffer in order to enable us to once more be in a proper relationship with him. So he's willing to suffer. He's in it with us, so to speak. It's not as if he's got these really far off great ideas, great plans, and so on, and they just call for us to suffer, and that's the end of it. No, he suffers with us. And once we see that, once we see the enormous marvelousness of the story of incarnation and atonement and incarnation and atonement, that God himself, the first being of the universe, was willing to suffer on our account, then maybe we still don't know. We still don't know why God permits evil, but we're no longer, it's a real resource. We've then got a way to think about it that makes it seem all right. We still know why it happens. It's what happens is wrong, bad, and so on. But we've got a way to think about it.